Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you.
Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am joined by somebody that's a very, very good friend of mine, owner, runner, Creme Tangerine Records, Mr. Parker Macy. Parker, how you doing?
I'm doing great, brother.
Rocking that Sledgehammer Horror shirt. I love it.
Yeah,
So
look at us
for those
being
of you that
sweet
don't
to each
know,
other.
yeah, what was that?
I said, look at us being sweet to each other.
Right. So for those of you that don't know, Parker has been on an episode of my first horror movie, one of my earlier episodes. Such a dope dude. We had so much fun. We wanted to work away for him to be back on here. And we figured what better way than to rank The Exorcist. But before we get started on that, Parker, what can you tell everybody about Creme Tangerine Records that they may not know? What do you do out there?
We are a new and used vinyl record store and record label run out of a 22-foot Airstream trailer. We've been open for 10 years in Costa Mesa, California, and we have been, I think last time we spoke, we were in the midst of lockdown times, and knock on wood. It's been going actually much better. I think last time we were kind of like, I don't know how everything's going to pan out, but I think we were really lucky that our customers in our industry, I think really helped us get through it. So we're very grateful for all the support and all the love.
Thank God. And just for those of you that didn't see, this is the 10-year anniversary shirt for Creme Tangerine Records. So I'm so proud to be a proud owner of this shirt. And
hey, thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. I have all the links for him down here in the description as well, guys. So if you're in the business for any used records, I mean, just hold on one second.
Take your time.
Where are you? Even if you're in the business for film soundtracks.
Oh yeah, nice.
Look no farther than Creme Tangerine Records, my friends. Oh, dude, absolutely. I love you guys. I love your store. I love what you do. I can't wait till this summer when I can come in there in person and shake your hand and give you a hug. I'm so excited. As long as we're both vaccinated and masked up, I would be proud to give you a hug. My friend, it is
I got my first shot. I'm getting ready for the number 2. Let's boogie.
Yep. Make sure you drink a lot of fluids, get a lot of rest, man. I want to make sure you're safe out there.
Thank you. Back at you, man.
So now let's get started on the reason why we're here, Parker. We are here to rank the Exorcist franchise.
Hell yeah.
Now, for those of you that don't know, we are not including all the spin-off Exorcist stuff. We are not including the short-lived TV show. We are ranking 1 through 5 in the Exorcist timeline. So that is 1, 2, The Heretic, Exorcist 3, Exorcist 4, which is Exorcist the Beginning, and then Exorcist 5, Dominion. Those are the ones that we are ranking. And Parker, since you are the guest, I will let you go first. Obviously, we are ranking from least favorite to favorite. What falls at the bottom of the barrel for you, my friend?
Well, we got to talk about the prequels real quick because they're pretty much the same movie.
Yes.
And I'm still kind of lost on the timeline of when I think Dominion was actually made first and scrapped, right? Is that is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
And I gotta say, for good reason, and that's my number 5. I think Dominion is gosh, it's so bad, man. It's rough. It's rough. And like it's pretty much the same script and everything for the beginning. So I actually went back and forth on which one was going to be number 5 between those two, and it's just got to be that first one. Just that final scene with the Buddha thing, it's just so rough. It's so rough. So for me, that's number 5. I mean, the more I thought about it, the more I just thought it was the worst. But sorry, my fortune teller machine is on attract mode, so it's trying to get customers right now. It's not gonna work.
That's all good, brother. I actually went a little bit different here because for my number 5, and this shocks a lot of people, but this is actually in the running for the worst movie I have ever seen, and that goes to The Exorcist 2, The Heretic.
I thought you might. Yeah.
Man, like there's some even though I'm going to talk bad about this movie, I am going to try to say some positives about it. Like I like the beginning when you got the lady that's on fire. I thought that was a pretty sweet scene. I like when the African person, when they're, for those who haven't seen the movie, I don't want to be too spoilery, but it's fucking The Exorcist 2. If you haven't seen it by now, you're not going to see it. When you see him turn into Pazuzu for the first time, it's really awesome. But this movie is so slow. It's so boring. There's really no scares. It's got the weakest third act, I feel, out of all of them. And it has the worst fall sequence when the dude is falling in between in the cavern. Like, it looks
that's rough.
God awful. But another thing I did like is I liked the Exorcist 1 flashback, how they're talking and the lights are flashing and you see the flashback to part 1, and killing Reagan when she's Pazuzu, the Pazuzu Reagan, how you have the two of them that are there and you see him kill the Pazuzu Reagan. That was pretty cool. So not a lot to say about Exorcist 2 for me. So let's move on to your number 4. What would be at number 4 for you, my friend?
I'm going to go back to the prequels and say Exorcist the Beginning is number 4 for me. It's also horrible. It's pretty much the same script. There are some changes. Father Marin is I think the only person that's the same actor, or maybe the only one main character.
Him and the tour guide that took him. That's the only other person that was the same actor in the film.
Yeah. Okay. That's the one that actually came out in theaters. Dominion was direct to DVD, right?
Yep.
Which may be even too much for that. But I will say that I liked, going back to Dominion real quick, I did like the cold open with the extended World War II scene.
Yeah.
In the first one. In the second, not really the second one, but in the theatrical release, the beginning, you kind of get snippets of it throughout the film, and you kind of learn that story as you go. I mean, you kind of know what's going to happen from the first. But I did like in Dominion how they threw that whole scene at you, and it was just a big stress case right off the bat. Kind of started with a bang, and then you can get disappointed. In the beginning, they do it even worse, where you kind of know what's happening, and you kind of figure it out. But then they just keep going back to the scene, and they don't really give you the full throttle punch in the nuts there.
Right.
But I do think that if it wasn't for the closing with the was she like a nurse or something that kind of turns into a Reagan looking demon?
Sarah.
Yep. I think she was a hell of a lot cooler as far as a demonic being than the Zen Buddha guy. You know? I don't know how they thought that was going to be a scary thing.
I don't know.
I think they might. I don't know. Maybe they were already practicing that makeup for something else, and they just went, "Well, let's close out the Exorcist prequel with that." I don't know, but I did think that at least the makeup on Sarah was fantastic. She had some really cool lines, that I won't repeat here.
No, you can go ahead. You don't want to fuck me anymore, Marin?
You don't want to fuck me anymore, priest? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. That was creepy as hell. That brings you back a little bit to the original 73 Reagan, which is cool. But I mean, there's still not much for me to redeem there.
Right.
So give me your number 4. What is it for you?
My number 4 is Dominion. The Exorcist, which would be number 5.
Yep.
And like we just talked about, it's the exact copy of 4 with minor differences. Like we said, instead of Sarah, it's the mentally unstable boy. Instead of a hyena killing the kids, it's the crazy guy that thinks that the white people have brought God and God is bringing evil onto them.
Right.
Like you said, this was filmed first in shelf because James Robinson, the owner of Morgan Creek, he refused to release it. He watched it. He was like, there's not any fucking way on earth we're releasing this. Reshoot it. I want you to reshoot it, add this, and then we'll give you a theatrical release. And then a year later, they're like, fuck it. Let's go straight to DVD with it. Talking about some of the cool scenes from part 5, though, because like I said, I do always want to put a little bit of positivity here.
Sure.
Seeing Pazuzu was really cool. And I did think Pazuzu was awesome. I did like the story that they did in part 5 in contrary to part 4 with the thieves, how they went in and tried to steal from Pazuzu in the church that was buried. And then you see them killed in the religious way. and they're strung up because they had been trying to steal from that church, and Pazuzu
Right.
was like, hell no.
And that was that was a creepy scene. I like that.
Yes.
I like that.
And
That was cool.
I do like the first time you see Pazuzu and the boy, when the other priest puts the cross up to his head and he's like, "Don't you ever touch me with that thing, priest." And he's spitting like that was awesome. But one scene I want to talk about, when you have the boy and he's walking around with Pazuzu and his face, I don't know if they just didn't enhance a digital effect here because they didn't have the budget, but his face just turns white. Like it just turns white, and it looks like they were going to put something over top of it, you know, in post maybe, and they just never did because this got shelved. And then when they released it, they just left it, and it looks so fucking stupid. Like you watch it, you're like, what the fuck was that? Like he turned white. Like all he did was like there was no demonic possession. It was just a white face, you know. So I think that's another thing that really held this movie back was obviously James Robinson of Morgan Creek didn't like it, so he shelved it, and that obviously probably cut into the budget. So I think that's a big reason why this movie fell as far as it did for me, because I think it, and I think the reason why, obviously, you guys know Exorcist: The Beginning is ranked above this. I think had I seen Dominion first, I would have maybe liked that one more. But going into it and watching it after The Beginning, I think I had already seen this. I seen this with better effects. The practical effects were better. The CGI was better because it got the theatrical release. It had the bigger budget. Had Dominion had that budget, I liked a lot more of the story that happened in Dominion than I did in The Beginning. So it's one of those, it's a flip of a coin. I seen The Beginning first, so I think I like that one more because of that. So, but before I get too much into The Beginning, let's go into your number 3.
Number 3 for me would be 2, Exorcist 2. It's like you said, it is horrible, and I think that when we spoke about this, I figured I was going to pick this as the worst one, as number 5, until I had to watch that prequel essentially twice because they're the same thing, pretty much. And but I was immediately thinking, okay, well, what's number 4 going to be? Because I know what number 1 is, I know what number 5 is, but then I was wrong. I think that for me personally, I do think that the scenes that are redeeming in part 2 are so much more redeeming than the scenes in the prequels.
Sure.
Like you said, whatever that light flashy, kind of therapeutic process was. That was cool. That was really cool. I thought it was an interesting thing. I liked when she steals the thing and goes and tries to go off and do this thing with the priest. There's so many parts of this movie that are horrible, and there are not many every time that I see her tap dance, like she, first of all, she's horrible at it. She's not good. I don't know, and it's weird because I don't know, she's still a young girl, but they've got her tap dancing around, and it's just a weird choice. Just a weird. So many things don't make any sense. So many things don't connect to anything. It's rough.
And one thing I didn't mention about 2 that I should have, I can't get rid of 2 for reasons that I'll say coming up. I also think this one is the most unnecessary because I feel like 3 would have been a better direct sequel to part 1 than 2 was. So something I wanted to say about 2, I can't get rid of it, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But I think out of all these, even though 4 and 5 are essentially the same movie, I just feel like 2 is the most unnecessary. It's like that was the biggest cash grab for me rather than making a good story. Let's bring back Linda Blair. Let's do what we can to try to get some cash and see what happens. And William Peter Blatty obviously was like, well, let me take another stab at this with part 3. So that'll bring us to number 3 for me, and that is Exorcist 4, The Beginning. Obviously something that has affected me for a long time. I did see this in cinema, and something that's affected me for a long time is the God Isn't Here Today priest.
God is not here today, priest.
Just really, really hit me hard, just knowing that people had to go through that, then the kid getting attacked by the hyena, that was rough as a father. Then it was rough watching. Now as a father, that's something rough to watch. One thing I like about this movie that they did in this one and in Dominion, one of the storylines is the reason this church is here and why it's so special is this is where Lucifer fell after the war between heaven and hell, and Lucifer was cast back down to earth. This is the spot where he landed. A scene that I can't show here. Obviously, you guys have been seeing some of the scenes I've been putting over top while me and Parker have been talking, but one I cannot show because I don't want this video to get demonetized. When they pull the baby out of the woman and it's stillborn, and it's got maggots all over it. It's, if you watch 4 and 5, it's the exact same scene. The exact, they even cut the baby to the exact same. It's the different actors and everything, but the baby is the exact same shot, and it's so disgusting. It's so sad. I did like this one was easily the most bloody and gory of the whole franchise. I do like when you find out that it's Sarah. And like you said, when she's crawling on that wall, you know, when they're in that cave, or when she's up on that cross and she flips over and tells him, she's like, don't move, you're mine.
Yeah.
You know, and then one other positive I really liked about this movie was just because it's so freaky to watch it alone in the dark when the little brother's having the dream, because you think the little brother's the one that's possessed throughout this movie. Then it turns out that it's Sarah. She went down because she was the priest's wife and she got the stuff down there and Pazuzu took her. But when the brother's having the dream and he unwraps it and it's his brother's head, you know, like that part to me was so dark and so twisted. I loved it so much, man.
There are good scenes in it. There are good scenes hidden in these dog turds for sure.
So that's why I think, and that one, maybe it's more nostalgia for me too. Like I said, out of all the Exorcist films, that's the only one I've seen in cinema. Dominion went straight to DVD, and the other ones I was too young. Everybody that watches this knows that the first Exorcist has a stigma to me because that's the only movie my mother ever shut off. My mother shut that off when we were watching it and said, nope, this is too scary. You're not going to watch this. So The Exorcist has always meant a lot to me because of that, because it was like, fuck that. I'm watching it. You know? So let's move on to your
Exorcist
number 2,
was the movie for me that my dad actually was like, you know, even when I was old enough, you know, that, you know, the rating system didn't really come into play as much with what I was going to watch. That was still a veto for me. So I did get to see The Exorcist in theaters, but I saw it when, you know, it was re-released in 2000. And I was 16 and just kind of driving. And I went down and saw it at the theaters right down by the pier in Huntington Beach. And I remember being nervous that they weren't going to let me in because I wasn't 18 or something. It wasn't a problem. The person working was probably younger than me, and I watched it by myself in the theaters, and it was of course the extended version that you've never seen. And but that was the first way I saw it, was with the you know, extended, what is it, 8 or 9 extra minutes or something.
And this is where you get her crawling up the stairs,
that's such
doing the spider crawl. Yes,
scene.
dude.
Such a great scene. See, I mean, I knew that there was stuff added to it, but I had no idea what, since I hadn't seen it before. And that was one of the coolest scenes in the whole thing. You know, at least in the first 2/3 of the movie, and the last third of the flick is definitely brutal as hell. But you know, that they gave you a lot of sneak peeks at the monstrosity to come, and that one was definitely one of them. And I was actually recently told, let's go to my number 4. Sorry about that. I'm getting sidetracked. We got plenty of time to talk about Exorcist 1. But my number 2 would be number 3, of course, which I think is actually such a good movie. I love Exorcist 3. It's fantastic. It's there's so many great scenes in there. And even rewatching it, knowing it was coming, when the nurse is going around in the empty halls checking the rooms, and then the little angel looking demon comes out with a giant, oh my goodness. Even rewatching it now, I know it's coming, and I made like a audible yelp in my room. Oh, you know,
yes, dude, I love it.
Terrifying, great. You know, and when the old lady's crawling on the ceiling, it's amazing. And that last room in the, you know, the kind of rubber room, or the last scene in that rubber room kind of cell where he's goes back and forth talking with you know, the demon, while demons, you know, shape shifting between all of these. Oh my goodness, what a great scene.
Right there when the cross comes up and it has the boy with the black face Jesus head on it.
Yeah.
And then you see the other priests coming up. You know, like, it's just when Damien is coming up and he's crucified, you know, like, oh, so dark, man. I'm glad you picked Exorcist 3 this high, because a lot of people I talk to don't put it this high, which brings me into my number 2, which is a little bit of a curveball. The Exorcist. The
What?
original Exorcist is my number
Okay.
2.
God, I
Now,
still
here's
love you,
why.
but you're wrong. Just kidding.
I
Just
I
kidding.
think when it comes to being a horror movie, this is the scariest movie of all time. It's a slow burn. And then you know what Linda Blair went through behind the scenes. You know, she goes in for her audition, and you know, do you know what masturbating is? If we ask you to masturbate,
Right.
can you do that? She's a little girl, you know.
Right.
The differences I feel watching this movie as a dad as compared to watching it as a kid. You know, as a kid, you're like, oh, you know, look at this girl, what she's going through. Why don't her parents just leave and kill her? Now I'm a dad. And I'm like, if that was my little girl, I'm going to do whatever I can to help her out. But this movie has some of the most iconic scenes in horror history, whether it's Regan when she's peeing on herself, you know, and everybody around looking. It's been parodied millions of times.
You're gonna
When the
die up
bed,
there. Yeah.
the bed is just shaking.
Uh-huh.
That's another scene that completely terrified me. Seeing Pazuzu for the first time, just that flash. You have a little bit of a flash, and that's all you get. One scene I don't think is talked about enough is when when Damien is talking to his mom in the hospital when she's about to die. You know, like, I lost my mother, unfortunately, at the age of 50 to a heart attack. She died in her sleep. We didn't know it was coming. And scenes like that hit me hard now, you know, because what would I have said if I had the chance to see her again, you know? And, you know, that's a scene I don't think gets talked about enough, but there's so many other scenes in this movie that blew me away. You know, you have Reagan's head spin, which is a huge, huge thing. You have the puke, obviously, you know, the pea soup, something everybody talks about.
I always talk about how I mean, I know Linda Blair goes to a lot of these horror cons and stuff, and I've never met her, but if she's ever at a horror, I just want a can of pea soup signed by her. That's the one thing that I would want signed by Linda Blair. I don't need a photo. I want a can of pea soup.
Yeah, no, we obviously know instead of a photo. Don't take my picture. Just sign this can for me, please. We obviously know, now that your number 1 is The Exorcist. But before we get into that, what is your favorite scene from The Exorcist? Like, if you had to pick one scene that really stuck with you the most, because I think for me, obviously, even though a lot of people don't talk about it, at the end when Father Damien gets possessed and then he runs and jumps out that window, that to me is another one because to me, especially as a kid, because I ended up sneaking off and watching this movie. And as a kid that grew up in the church, they're, you know, your priest, your pastor, your father, they're invisible. You know, they're invincible. I'm sorry, they're invincible. They are God's servant. They can't be touched. When, you know, the power of Christ compels you. They are the ones that battle this. And to see him get overtaken and then run and jump out that window to take his own life, knowing that he's going to stop this demon, was so powerful to me as a kid. So which scene was it that got it for you?
I wouldn't say it's my favorite, just because it's not pleasing at all. But the most effective scene would be the crucifix. I mean, that just it hurts to think about every aspect of that. Like, it's just a lot. Like, it's, you know, and it may be, you know, for me, I watch a lot of your videos. I know you've said this as well, but any sort of violent sexual abuse in a horror movie will take me right out of it. Like, it's just, this is the one because maybe because of the possession or whatever it is, that it doesn't, I mean, it still disgusts me to death, but it doesn't take me out of the story. It's horrifying, and it's, you know, it's grotesque. A rape scene or any sort of sexual violence in any horror film, which is, you know, it does ruin a lot of films for me. And this one gets close to ruining it for me. But it's obviously such an interesting spin on sexual violence that it does affect me a lot. Every time I see it, it still makes me go like, oh God, Jesus, it's the worst, you know?
And another thing about this movie that doesn't get talked about enough is you get hope in the craziest way in this movie. When you see in her stomach that she's carving "help me" in her own stomach, and you're like, wow, we have hope that she's in there in the darkest fucking way possible. They gave you the darkest glimmer of light you could possibly get in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So while we're on it, let's talk about it. Your number one is The Exorcist.
The Exorcist. Yeah. And you know, I rewatched all 5 of these to chat with you about them, and it was a blast. But I watched this one 2.5 times. I watched it, you know, and then I kind of went back and watched some scenes again just to kind of refresh myself. But I just rewatched it again the other night with headphones in. Holy crap. I texted you. I said I watched it with headphones. Game changer.
Game changer.
I mean, the sound design on this film is stupid. And you know, the woman that does the voice for the possessed Reagan is I'm sure you've seen all the behind the scenes stuff on it, and how she just chain smoked and drank whiskey and all this stuff for weeks and weeks to prepare her voice for that. It's man, it is a I know you already kind of mentioned it's a slow burn, but I do remember thinking it was slow I'm not even just a slow burn. I remember thinking it was slow the first time I saw it in the theater. I just remember going like, okay, when am I going to get really freaked out here? And now that I think I understand the story a little bit more, there are parts of the slower parts that are just as horrifying. You know, like I love when Reagan's talking to her mother about Captain Howdy and with the Ouija board and everything, and just watching her mom's face kind of start to get. The acting's fantastic. You can really feel every little bit of that parenting nightmare that she's going through. To me, it is gotta be the perfect horror film. I mean, it really is. There's not a lot of campy to it at all. There's not a lot of unnecessary violence, although we were talking about the sexual. I mean, I don't know if it's unnecessary. It's a really fantastic
adds to heartbreak towards Reagan.
Absolutely. There's a reason for everything, I think, and it's really, really put it back up, back up in the gold medal horror film kind of spot for me. God, it's so good. And I gotta say, talking to my employee at work and some of my friends, they said, what have you been up to this week? I watched all 5 Exorcist movies. My friends go, are you crazy? What are you doing? They've all been over here watching horror films with me at 2:00 in the afternoon, because that's what we do.
Right.
But all 5 in a week? Oh, are you kidding me? Are you okay? Well, yeah, actually 3 of them aren't too intense anyway, so it's fine, But
it's funny you say that, because when people think of The Exorcist, I don't even think a lot of people lump the sequels in with the original. And when I was talking about The Exorcist, what I should have said was, this is a list of our favorites, guys, but I think The Exorcist is the best of the bunch. It's not my favorite, which if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, I'd have said you're fucking nuts if you thought anything else. But I think it's the best of the bunch. When it comes to how scary it is, the message they were getting across, it is absolutely the best of the bunch. So that's something I should have said when I was talking about one, but I agree. And The Exorcist will always have that stigma to it of the scariest horror movie ever made, for good reason. There's a very good reason why.
Oh, it's great. It's great. But I also love 3. So let's get to your number one, my friend.
Which is The Exorcist 3. Man, now here's the thing, where The Exorcist is just a terrifying psychological horror movie, 3 is a cop drama. It's a slasher. It's everything for me. It has Charles Lee Ray himself, Brad Dourif, playing why can't I think of the killer's name right now?
He's got a name. It's not the I know what you're talking about. It's not the horoscope killer. It's like the something.
It's like that though. It's like the horoscope killer. That's what I was gonna say. But
something weird.
He is so dark, and when he's delivering his lines in this movie, it's so great. I love the old lady's confession, and then she ends up killing that priest. She's like, I have to kill him, and then she ends up killing him. You see the black kid that was crucified with his head cut off, but he was drugged with succinylcholine, so he felt everything that was happening to him. The old lady that's like, are you the guy that's here to fix my radio? And he's like, yeah, I'm here to fix your radio. She's like, this one? And he's like, yeah. She's like, I knew you weren't the radio repairman. This is a telephone. And she's not holding anything. Like, I love that.
She sees him later and she's like, oh, you're the radio guy, aren't you?
Yep. And one scene that always scared me as a kid, at the very beginning, when the church doors open and the statue of Christ opens its eyes, like, that always scared me, man. Even as a little kid, I remember that scene fucked with me so bad. It's always scared me. One scene I wanted to talk about, you already brought up, when she's crawling on the ceiling. The way they did that was they filmed her crawling on the floor, and then they filmed him walking through with certain cues happening, and they superimposed them over top of each other.
Okay, that makes
and
sense.
You would never know by watching the scene because it looks so great.
Really well
The
done.
Exorcist 3, I watched it through a streaming service, which is available on Amazon Prime. And right after, I bought the Blu-ray with all the special features so I could watch all the special features that went on behind it. One scene that does look pretty goofy is when he possesses the nurse, and she goes and she's about to cut Julie's head off in front of the detective, and they just barely pull her out. I don't know what it is about that scene, but it just looks goofy as hell, like when you watch it. And one of the best jump scares of all time, you already talked about, with the nurse, and then you see the white come out.
Terrifying.
Right after you see that, it cuts to the statue of the headless Jesus. So you know that she just got beheaded.
Yep.
And when the priest goes in to talk to Damien, and he ends up getting ripped apart, and he's on the wall and he's pulling himself off and it's ripping his skin off to try to battle him.
Yeah, that was vicious.
Very vicious. But the thing about this movie is there's a lot of levity to this movie. There's a lot of funny moments, like when he's talking to, because there's the priest and the detective, and they were both friends of Father Damien. So every year they meet on the anniversary of his death and they go see It's a Wonderful Life as a good way to tie in 1 and 3 together. And he's like, I can't go home. I have a trout in my bathtub and we're going to kill and eat it.
That's right.
He's like, do you smell me? I haven't had a bath in a week.
yeah.
There's a lot of funny moments in this movie too, which really brings that levity to such a dark movie. And I'm kicking myself because I can't remember his name. The killer. Like you said, the Gemini, I think it was. Gemini.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and the way they flushed him out was by fake reports in the news. So that's how they would flush him out. And this guy is the Gemini. That's It's not horoscope, it's Gemini. Thank God I thought of that because it was going to drive me nuts. But like, he's in there and he's manifesting himself and he's taking over other people's bodies to commit these crimes. And it's so slasher and it's so dark and it's so scary. And it has even though, look, the third act in the first one is monumental, but I love the third act in this movie where they're in that padded cell and Damien comes up and the kid comes up with the blackface Jesus statue head. And you have the other priest that's ripping himself off. And the end is so dark, man. When Damien finally turns back into himself and he's like, now, Bill, and he shoots him and kills him, just so they can get rid of the Gemini killer and the Pazuzu demon. So for me, The Exorcist is the best movie in the franchise, but The Exorcist 3 is my favorite because it's so dark. It's so funny. It's got a cop angle to it. It's definitely slasher. To me, it has the best of all the horror things that I love. There's emotion to it. When he finally figures out that he's going after his daughter, you're invited to the dance, Bill.
Yeah.
And he finally figures out that he's going after Julie, his daughter. It's just been so amazing. And I love The Exorcist 3. For those people that never watched it because they just think it's a campy sequel, check out Exorcist 3. I think that it stands the test of time. The acting's phenomenal. You'll get some laughs. You'll get the best jump scare of all time. And what people don't talk about is the jump right before that, when she goes in the room and the guy pops up out of the bed.
Oh yeah.
He's like,
he's just pissed that she woke him up. Yeah, I'm trying to sleep in here.
Yes, like that's another great jump scare right there, man. So
one of my favorite things in it, for a whole different reason, is I love a good cameo. And you remember that dream sequence where he goes to heaven and there's all the winged angels and stuff down there? Do you know? Did you catch? There's 3 cameos in that. I
seen Fabio.
Fabio
was in there. I seen Charles. Was it Charles Barkley?
Patrick Ewing.
Yeah. I knew it was one of the Space Jam basketball players.
And then Samuel L. Jackson. He plays.
I couldn't find Sam Jackson. Everybody tells me
He's the only one that has a line. He's got the line. He plays the blind guy.
Yeah.
And he sits there and he goes, The Living or Deaf, man, or something like that.
That's Sam Jackson?
Samuel L. Jackson.
Dude, I was looking all over because everybody tells me Samuel L. Jackson's one of the angels.
Big dark glasses on, so it's kind of tough to see.
Okay,
I'm gonna actually be doing the the actual Foley for the line later, because it doesn't sound like him. But
right.
You can tell that's him. Yeah, he's in.
It's probably the reason why is because
seconds, you get 3 good cameos.
The reason why, because it was with Samuel L. Jackson, like the living or motherfucking deaf.
yeah,
that's definitely added the motherfucker in there.
Yeah.
But so that's our ranking, guys. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let us know in the comments below where I'm right and where Parker's wrong. Let us know.
Those are the options. All right, I like it. That's fine. That's fine.
Make sure you're checking out Creme Tangerine Records. Like I said, guys, this is not only my friend, but they have the dopest t-shirts. They sell some of the dopest scores on vinyl to movies that we grew up loving.
And we've got the Exorcist in stock. So
there you go. Well, you might not after this. And on top of that, they have great records. They have great cassette tapes. They have a little bit of everything out there. You can check out their website right down here in the description. If you're a fan of vintage vinyl, new vinyl, great music, great designs on your t-shirts, Creme Tangerine Records is definitely the place you're going to want to check out. So make sure you're clicking the links down here in the description. As always, Parker, don't go anywhere, man. I want to talk to you for a second. Everybody else, thank you so much for watching. Keep talking horror. Stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.